There was the one other SEAL who I trusted. He and his spouse told me they thought it would help Marcus. I did no research. I did nothing. Yeah. I'm like, if you say it will help him, I'll try to convince him. And when I approached him, it was in complete love. It was not in, he was exhausted. I was exhausted. He knew that this was the end for us. And so not that I gave him an ultimatum, but I gave him a very loving choice with one choice. It was like, please do this. Please do this.
Part of you thinks or knows that you're in this awakened dream state. Part of you are like fighting this demon. And so I saw like a lot of demons, literal demons. And for me, it was a very traumatic experience in itself. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of fighting. My weapon just like melted in my hands, or like the magazine fell out, or I tried to throw a punch and it didn't happen, like all that type of stuff. One time it showed me judgment. I was judging Amber so hard, and the kids, I was everything, every movement. Well, in my experience, all of a sudden I had all these things about judgment. And I'm like, holy shit, that's me. I'm judging them. Stop judging them.
In today's social media obsessed world, we all see the successes, the world record breaking, and the achievements of the people we look up to. But what we don't see is what goes on behind the scene. Hosted by power couple Dean and Alana Stott, this show is dedicated to asking difficult questions while discovering the support systems and people behind those we love and respect in media, business, athletics, and high-performance culture. Dean and Alana believe that through honest communication, teamwork, and mutual respect, that anything is possible.
Like, there's not a better partner I could choose who's equally as crazy as me, because we have a chip on our shoulder to prove people wrong, you know, and to prove ourselves right.
I can go be the face of this. I can go do this, but I don't understand the back end of this. I have to learn business. I have to learn how this works.
Many couples in this dynamic are stuck and unable to move forward in an identity crisis.
Marcus's energy is so bad. I feel like I need to cleanse my house. Like it's suffocating. And then seeing him 24 hours later, he was as light as air. Yeah.
And we literally embraced, hugged. I stepped back and I said, this is exactly what the guys need.
When we can look behind the scene and learn from each other, we can finally move forward and transform into our fullest potential.
Yeah. So
then Amber started getting me into brain clinics because saying like, well, he's not getting better.
In 2016 though, the brain autopsy was released, the first brain autopsy from a SEAL suicide in our community. Because we really hadn't been experiencing suicides. And there had been a couple, and in 2016, one autopsy was released into the community. And it was the first time that I had heard about interface astroglial scarring and also chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And I started researching these two conditions, and they're both degenerative brain diseases caused by concussive and subconcussive repeated blows. So it's like blast overpressure for interface astroglial scarring, and then concussions and subconcussive blows for CTE. And I'm like, oh my gosh, both of these would be likely applicable to Marcus. He's having all the symptoms and he has all the history. So I immediately realized this is a brain condition, and this is not just sheerly like a psychological or emotional thing that he can't get past. And I was exhausted. And so my approach had become, in a very short, very angry, blame, criticism, condemnation, guilt, shame, all of the things.
And all these things, did it ever cross your mind to go?
Oh, yes. Frequently.
Yeah.
Frequently.
Yeah, all the time. We were fighting like cats and dogs at this point. I mean, it was nuts. I mean, there was no relationship. It was blame you. So relationship between us was terrible. Relationship with the kids were, they were just scared. They didn't want to come around. Like I look back now and go, oh my goodness, but they didn't even want to be around us. We just saw a video recently, like Maggie, our daughter's talking in the video. You could hear us in the background, and she goes like this, and she kind of like looks at the camera. I'm like, oh man, like that must have been horrible for them.
Yeah.
So-
And what age were they at this point then?
So they would have been, oh gosh,
You know, teens.
12 and
12 and 13.
12 and
12,
15.
13.
Yeah.
12 and 15.
They
Yeah.
were born in 2000, 2002.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And we were new to Texas. And so they were getting settled in and making their own friends. And we had a mortgage and we had responsibilities. So it was a lot to think about leaving because we had just gotten there. And a lot of the logistical complications of leaving him were not very clear. And I never wanted to. I always wanted to try. My dad, being a football coach, had instilled one thing in me, which is you don't ever quit anything. And so I was really committed to basically surviving in the dysfunction, but I wasn't really trying to make it better either. I thought it was all Marcus and like it was a condition that he should be able to
I thought it was
manage.
all Amber. It was you. It wasn't me.
Yeah. But when I learned about this brain thing, like that there was more to the story potentially, I started to become very concerned. And so I got him into brain clinics. I changed my approach with him. I really was committed to doing whatever it took. But the more things he would try unsuccessfully, the more just disconnected and disheartened he would become. And I knew that we were close to losing him because he would say things to me like, I am such a burden on you. You guys would be so much happier without me here. And
Which is really common that we just we found out recently that those exact words are very common from some of the individuals that are experiencing this stuff. They're saying the same thing. Like, I'm a burden on you.
Yeah.
I'm a burden to everybody. Like I have no purpose. I have no place here. I'm not good at anything. Like it's weird,
And
if
for
you wrote these down.
a population of people who are used to doing insanely difficult things fairly easily, and they can't get better.
Yeah.
They can't feel better. That's very, very frustrating and very unusual for them.
I think that was the particular time that I always talk about that was, for me, when I really seen it with Dean, was this one afternoon he went to the kitchen and I just heard this like almighty scream, this like noise, this loudness. And I went through what's going on. I thought he'd hurt himself, he'd stabbed himself. What's gone on through here? And I came through and there was just this egg on the floor, like broken on the floor. And I said, what's wrong? And he was like, I'm not a man. I can't even make breakfast.
Can't
I'm
make an egg.
lit. It was
That's
just
crazy.
like, it was just like, from this egg, I was like, it's okay. We can clean the egg up. We can make another one. We can do. I think that was my turning point to say this. We need to do something here. There's something.
I think it's the identity thing. I think you've gone from being the top of your game, always succeeding, always accomplishing the missions to, you don't feel like you're part of a team anymore. And, I started to get better when I started pushing myself in other areas. It wasn't, I'd soon realized I can't. There's a great book called Tribe, that we belong in a tribe, and you've now left this tribe, you can't get back in. And so you need, there's other tribes that and I talk about the civilians and
Sebastian
Unger.
Sebastian Unger.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah. But you just want to be part of a tribe, and when you find another group, and when I said the civilians, just for the record, I used to say civilians don't understand. They don't have the same work ethic. They're always late. But actually, Lana corrected me, and actually, it's right. I'm not right. There's plenty of civilians with the right work ethic, with even stronger work ethic than some others, and drive and passion. I just hadn't found that group yet.
I work with those people now.
Yeah.
I'm like trying to keep up with them.
And that's. The thing is, you come from a team where everyone has that same drive and passion. So when you come out, I just think you need to find that team again. You need to handpick that team. And sometimes that team's right next to you. I just didn't realize you were there next to me with the same work ethic and drive. So I can relate to that massively. And so when you realized about the brain trauma and things, was that the turning point that it actually...
Yeah, I thought we're really onto something here.
Yeah.
If I can just get them into brain clinics, surely they will know what to do from here. Like, I know it's not a psychological, emotional thing solely.
Yeah.
And I got him into like 5 brain clinics or supplemental sort of treatments like magnet stimulation or hyperbaric oxygen. And those are great for some people. They were not so great for Marcus. The diagnostic piece of some of the brain clinics were really effective. Like, we know what the problem is, but what's the solution? And there really is no solution. So the turning point for me came when our daughter said to me, Mom, how much longer do we have to do this? And at that point, I realized that just because I had a resiliency and this, incessant, I can't quit, I was subjecting them to a lifestyle that wasn't healthy. And I thought, well, we don't have to do this for one more day because you're dependent on me and I'm dependent on myself and I can make a different choice. And so I had basically decided to leave Marcus, but he was leaving very shortly thereafter for another brain clinic. And I was really holding on to hope that this could be the one, but also realizing that this probably isn't the one because nothing has been the one.
Yeah.
So I've got to make my plans.
Yeah.
And all along the way, in the back of my mind, there was one friend who had been out of the country to do a psychedelic therapy, and he reported that it saved his life and changed his life. And I thought, I want to know that I've tried everything.
Yeah.
So if I can convince him to do this one thing, maybe that will at least bring him back to baseline in some way, even if we can't be together. And then if the worst happens and, he chooses to take his life, I'll at least know that I tried everything.
Yeah.
And did that go through when you're thinking about leaving him at this point? Was there, you've got your kids, but did you have that mother feeling towards him in the way that if I left him, what's...
Yeah, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I thought we're the only stabilizing force, and more so me than the kids. I knew that it would not be good for him.
Yeah. And the psychedelics, how was it easy enough to convince Marcus about that? Because you must have been deflated.
I'm guessing no.
No, but I was just, because I mean, you must have been deflated that everything else isn't working until now. Or you were at the point, well, let's try it.
I was at the point I would try anything, but I also deflated this for a year.
Okay, well.
So this came to me, I think, about a year prior, and I was like, psychedelics. I mean, WTF. Yeah. I grew up with two parents that went to Woodstock. Hippies, listened to a lot of classic rock and just thought psychedelics were recreational drugs, flat out. I didn't understand it. Yeah. And I just thought it was not even weird. I was like, I don't get it. That doesn't make it.
That's a complete no-go zone.
Yeah.
And I felt the same.
I didn't understand.
Yeah. Totally fine with taking all the pharmaceuticals and everything. But
right. 100%.
Right.
Some of the drugs I mentioned to you earlier are so bad for you. Especially when they're mixed with other things. But I didn't know. And so I started to do some research, obviously. And the more I read, I realized that these were actually medicines that were abused as recreational drugs. And so it was like the opposite of what I had thought, not recreational drugs that they turned into, medicine that we use. And so it made more sense, but I still didn't understand. Like when you go do something that you've never done before, and hardly anybody if anyone, literally knows nothing about it, it's still weird.
There was the one other SEAL who I trusted. He and his spouse told me they thought it would help Marcus. I did no research. I did nothing. Yeah. I'm like, if you say it will help him, I'll try to convince him. And when I approached him, it was in complete love. It was not in... He was exhausted. I was exhausted. He knew that this was the end for us. And so not that I gave him an ultimatum, but I gave him a very loving choice with one choice. It was like, please do this. Please do this.
And was there one biggest fear about doing it? Was there a worry?
No, there was no worry. I think the only worry was exactly what I said. I'm like, this is not going to work. Like none of this shit works. Like, why are we now we're going to put another pharma agent in my body? And how is that supposed to help, any of this? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how exactly what I was thinking. So I was like, oh, what the heck? Like we tried everything else. We tried all this other stuff.
He did a bit of research leading into it where I didn't. I've done a lot of research since, but there was a significant amount of data produced in the 50s and 60s around these compounds. And then after the Vietnam War, of course, the Controlled Substances Act was introduced to try to tamp down the counterculture movement. And all of these really promising compounds were placed on Schedule 1, which means no therapeutic use and high potential for abuse. So you've got something incredibly therapeutic, saving lives every day, right alongside crack cocaine, heroin, meth, fentanyl, you know. Well, I guess
we basically lost 50
plants,
years of research on this. Like we probably could be a lot more people around today if but you know, that's another conversation. Again, you know,
and I think one of the biggest ones I hear from the guys when they talk about doing ayahuasca or anything, that they'll lose their manliness, I guess, is like lose their edge.
Lose their edge.
Yeah.
Is that so? Was this an ayahuasca? Was it?
No, actually, what I experienced was something called ibogaine.
Okay,
it's another plant.
Yeah,
ibogaine is not a plant. Actually, iboga is a plant. Plant grows in West Africa. Okay, in certain environments. Ibogaine's extracted. It's one of the most prevalent, not molecules, but alkaloids in it.
Yeah,
I think there's 13 alkaloids. And you know, similar to ayahuasca, kind of similar but different experiences. This was a really, really tough internal experience. So with ayahuasca, you could look around and know you're on something, you know, and the wall's bending and there's things that are happening. Ibogaine's not like that. It's your experience happens when you put eye shades on. So you have to cover your eyes or close your eyes, but you put eye shades on. As soon as you put them on, you're flat out in a movie. It's your movie of your life.
Wow.
It's wild. I've not done it, but all of the descriptions have more or less been the same.
Yeah, it's wild. And so you're talking about anywhere from 8 to 16 hours, you know, the peak.
Just one time.
One time. I mean, the peak is usually somewhere between 4 and 8 hours. Everyone's a little different. Let's say around 6 of very intense, nonstop stuff. And, you know, and then there's a reflection period. That's a number of hours after that where you just go what's just happened? But you're still dreaming. So you're in this dreamlike state.
Yeah.
And then finally, you know, it wears off, let's say 12, 14, 16 hours, depends. You finally go to bed. You see your body's just wiped out.
Yeah.
And then of course you're doing more reflecting because you just went through literally I've gone through hell, legitimate hell. And that's very tough to process for people. So if you can imagine someone that's gone through 50 years of hell versus let's say 5, that person who's gone through 50, if you just opened up the floodgates of shit that's happened, we'll call it trauma, we'll call it your whatever, childhood, sexual abuse, military, your best friend got killed, you know, you lost your spouse to cancer, whatever, you're going to go back and experience those things. And so for a person who's trying to see a therapist, that's what a therapist is supposed to do, is unwind that stuff for you. As you and I know, as we all know, the only way to get through something is to deal with it.
Yeah.
100%. If you compartmentalize it, there's only so long you can keep that compartmentalized. Something's going to open up Pandora's box. And if you don't open up it in the right way, it's going to everything's going to go to shit. And that can mean you flip out and go shoot up a mall, you kill yourself, you kill your family, you drink yourself to death, whatever it is, right? Ibogaine and many of the other psychedelics taken at a high dose can make all those things appear, and you have to deal with them at that time. So you can imagine a therapist trying to take 5 or 10 years of unwrapping whatever, you do that in a couple of hours. So it could open up the floodgates to, you know, you call it a bad trip, just a bad time. That's why, you know, we talk about this so much, and you're going to hear about it more and more if you hear about, because psychedelics are coming to market. They're going to be the future of mental health care because they get to the root cause of the issue. But they have to be done correctly. They have to be done with therapy. There has to be intense integration and therapy afterwards to make sure that you're able to kind of pull yourself out of what happened. That's why these shouldn't be done just haphazardly, and they shouldn't just be released into the market. There's a lot of people that think that we can hurt people that way.
Yeah, and I feel like there's a lot of company who would benefit from it being released quickly, so we can get a lot of bad stuff to happen. You know, so we can close it off.
And so you know, there's definitely arguments on both sides, but clinically guided therapeutic access. Like we need to control like where these medicines are coming from. Similar to prohibition, people are making alcohol in their bathtubs. Were you getting 100%? Were you getting 40%?
Yeah.
Like, was it poisonous? So that's what's happening right now. So that's why we have to regulate this. The federal government needs to, I believe, it's like everything else. Do I go through a stop sign? Yeah, sometimes. Do I think there should still be stop signs everywhere? Absolutely. Because if there's not, a lot of dumb people are going to get killed.
Yeah.
That's why we have rules and laws, right?
Yeah.
Like, so.
And
I'm gonna go down a rabbit hole on this.
Yeah, and the IB game, when you came back from that retreat, did you know straight away that it helped?
For me, it was immediate. It was
immediate.
So I took the medicine on Friday night. Well, I guess I can't call it medicine yet, so it's still a drug. So I took the drug on Friday night. I had a horrible experience. Like
Really?
I puked all night long, similar to what you've talked about.
They say puking is actually a very
They call
good
it
thing.
Purging, isn't it?
Called purging.
Yeah.
It's like releasing.
And it definitely did. Certain experiences, you see something that was super, didn't sit comfortable with you in your life.
But it's all your own, like you're not randomly seeing, snakes and monsters. It's just all your own stuff.
You do see some snakes and monsters, but the snakes and monsters might be part of your traumatic story, if that makes sense. So like the monster might be the monster that I'm dealing with. So like the monster could be maybe a bully that I didn't deal with, or maybe the monster is alcohol use or heroin use, or maybe the monster was the sexual perpetrator. And so
and they appear as a monster.
They might appear as a monster. They might appear as that person or that thing, but they also might appear as a monster. And you deal with it. I know. I'm looking at you.
You don't like spiders, eh?
You're like, man, this is right. So again, that's the subjective piece to psychedelics that they still don't, are still having trouble understanding with the mechanisms of action of the actual drug and how it's doing what it's doing. But we all know the only way to get past stuff is to deal with it, and we kind of
when that monster's appearing, I was like, are you aware that this isn't like, this is part of what's going on?
Little bit of both. So part of you thinks or knows that you're in this awakened dream state. Part of you are like fighting this demon. And so I saw like a lot of demons, literal demons. And, for me, it was a very traumatic experience in itself. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of, my weapon just like melted in my hands, or like the magazine fell out, or I tried to throw a punch and it didn't happen, like all that type of stuff. But the experiences that are tough, you get through them, and you get through them pretty quick so like you deal with it. The drug is actually a bit of a jokester too. It's like a comedian. It shows you and tells you lessons that you already know. Cause again, it's in your mind, right?
Yeah.
You already know these things, but you just can't pull them forward. The drug helps you pull those forward, and you'll literally laugh out loud and go, aha, like I get it. I get what you're trying to show me. Like one time it showed me judgment. I was judging Amber so hard and the kids. I was everything, every movement. If they dropped an egg on the floor, it was the end of the world, and I was judging them. But in my experience, all of a sudden I had all these things about judgment. And I'm like, holy shit, that's me. I'm judging them. Stop judging them.
Bit like me with civilians.
And it stopped. Exactly. And it stopped. But that's what it does. And
it
again,
brings things into awareness.
And it's just very subjective. So everybody's experience is going to be different.
Yeah.
But you come out the other side like whole again. And when I woke up finally on Sunday morning, it felt like the world had just been lifted off my shoulders. I just felt free and airy and like, oh, wow, I needed that.
And he looked different. He seemed different.
I was going to say, what did you see instant change?
It was very nerve-wracking for me. I got him on the plane and thought like, okay, this is it. I've done my job. If it doesn't work, at least I know. And then I was supposed to go see him the next day. And as it became closer and closer to go, I became more and more reluctant to see him because I thought, I've all my chips are on the table. If this didn't work, then I'm going to know immediately. And the friend who had introduced us to this idea picked me up from the airport, and we were driving down to see him. And I said, like, I can't go in. I don't want to see him. I can't go in. I cannot do this. She's like, just trust me. Just trust the process. He's great. He's asking for you. And so I got in there and I heard him walking down the hall. And when he came around the corner, it was immediately like the same guy I met in 1997. It was just like his whole demeanor, his eyes were light again. His spirit was light. He was like so charismatic, easygoing, lovable, and he had become this monster. In fact, she told me, because you stayed with them the night before you went down, she told me Marcus's energy is so bad, I feel like I need to cleanse my house. Like it's suffocating.
Yeah.
And then seeing him 24 hours later, he was as light as air.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we literally embraced, hugged. I stepped back and I said, this is exactly what the guys need. I was like, this is it. Like, I turned to the doctor and I was like, oh, there must have been thousands of individuals that went through before us. He's like, no, we treated veterans. He's like, I think we treated a couple like 7 years ago or 5 years ago.
Wow.
And I got mad. I almost got mad. I'm like, why doesn't the world know about this? And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like, we should know about this. We should have access to this. Why do we have to go through all this, jump through all these hoops for me to just be able to get here to do this? And so, I mean, that's basically what started Vets. You know, it wasn't called Vets on day one, but we wanted to help our friends that we already knew were like dealing with the same stuff.
Well, you're so excited, you know, and that's what we're getting out of the program too, is you take 1,000 pounds off of someone and they're suddenly like, oh, I'm ready to run. I'm ready to sprint. I want to help all my friends. And so
read the text you got today.
That was,
you don't have to say the name, but just like read what was written.
We have a group coming back from Mexico today. You got a text that said, like, I feel like the weight of the world is off my
weight of the world's completely off my shoulders.
And then I got an email that said basically in essence that like this saved my life. And you know, this started because we wanted to pay it forward. And that is the essence of our community, is just continually serving one another and taking care of one another.
Yeah, because again, like you and I, we probably both feel that we didn't do enough. You know, our friends are better than us, you know, that kind of, and so I feel like I missed out a lot. You know, I joke with people, I quit after 13 years. So I want to help guys that have done, 15 combat tours, 20 combat tours. Like, why not? They deserve it, you know? And I look and go, what the fuck did I do? So, if I could help more.
And was there still, obviously you've said that there was like a monster there and his energy was bad, but did you still get a glimpse of? Yeah,
it's certainly not a linear process. There are definitely ups and downs. It went from being 80-20 bad good to 80-20 good bad. But those 20, you go like, like put the walls back up, it's not safe. And so you basically have to relearn how to live together with this new person in the best way without getting your walls up to a point that, you start locking heads again. He definitely had bad days after I began.
It's a tourniquet. It's a tourniquet. It like stops the worst part of your life. Like it pauses that and brings you back up to baseline. But like I texted the guy earlier, I just said, hey, now the hard work's going to begin. Like you're great right now. I was like, you purged everything you needed to and you cleaned the filters out. But if you don't do anything, like if you don't go to the gym,
you got to put something good in that vacuum.
You're going to get out of shape. Like you got to continuously work out and you know.
And do you recognize in the 20% that he might, I'll call him, but like he might come back. Does it become more obvious to you?
Immediately. You become so aware of everything. Like I know exactly when I'm in that moment and I'm able to just stop it now, where before you just keep going down the hole, right? The rabbit hole, because you're not aware, but I don't want to call it woke because I will never say that, but you do wake up, right? You wake up in terms of being aware. You can see when you're around a couple that has really bad energy and it's like fighting all the time. You're just going, whoa, like, was that us? Because you can immediately see the difference in how.
What I've learned is that those downs were necessary. It's like a stock market ticker. It's like a series of ups and downs, but you're generally trending upward over time. And the downs become less steep and your ups become much more prevalent. And so the downs were teaching us how to be different.
Yeah.
They say that psychedelics will take you to the top of a mountain, but it's your job to stay there.
Yeah.
And we all have very deep rooted patterns, habits, ways of being. Some are good and some are bad. And so what I've seen Marcus do a ton of work on is his negative, deep rooted thought patterns down to like straight to the pit of hell. Like this is bad. Everything's bad. There's no hope. He can catch himself now and he doesn't. He doesn't go there. And then while he's, in this integration period or this sense of awareness, he can pivot from the bad thought patterns and create new ones. And so those become the deep-rooted patterns.
And both, what I want to talk about is, so there was definitely some psychological stuff going on, but there was also some physiological stuff. Like, so psychedelics work on both. So they do help purge the kind of any of the traumas and the anxieties and all that type of stuff, addictions. But they also help the physiological. So what we were taught that, this is your brain on drugs. Now they should show this is your brain on drugs, and they should show like a chia pet, but it's like growing because it actually is, the research is out. Like we don't have to like make believe anymore. The research is out. Like this is actually growing like brain volume. Like the research is there.
No, I'm saying it establishes new neuronal connections.
Yeah, and so the parts of the brains that were damaged, and again, a lot more research has to be done, but preliminary research is showing that if you did have brain, quote unquote, brain damage, mild TBIs or stronger TBIs, these are like fixing, it's regenerating the brain. It's making the brain kind of talk again in places that they weren't able to communicate or work before. So it's astounding what they're doing.
Another thing that psychedelics do in the brain is it quiets the default mode network. And so the default mode network is in essence our ego. It's like the stories we've told ourselves to survive. So if it's the before we leave on a long trip, you start telling yourself a story and you do it subconsciously. Like it's not, it just is a survival mechanism. Yeah. Well, what psychedelics do is it quiets that. And so you're able to process traumas or ways of being or unhealthy patterns and see them differently.
It allows you to learn again. I mean, basically that is starting from the day you're born. Because the day we're born, we're starting to learn. Like you touch something that's hot, you're like, oh, I'm not going to touch that again. Or your parents tell you.
I think that's something that would not make me nervous, but I think that if I was thinking about it, I had a treatment. I don't even know what the treatment was, so don't ask me what it was. But I went to see somebody in Santa Monica, and he'd just done something that I've never been able to really describe what it was that he'd done. But he releases things from Reiki, you that you could probably come close to Reiki, but it is a lot of touching. It's like as in energy healing, but I can't actually describe what it is he does. He was recommended to me from another friend who there's definitely some sort of other realm that he goes, but he releases things that have been attached to you for a long time. And one of the things he said to me was, I had a devouring mother. And my mum died when I was really young. So I was like, I love my mum, but she left a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. So he was like, you need to release her. But one of the main things he released was a kind of angel, I guess, that was protecting me from bad people that might want to do me harm. And I was like, what if I don't want to release that angel? What if that angel is helping me? Yeah. And he was like, no, you don't need it anymore. You don't need this protection. And I think that the same as what you were saying, that I feel that the trauma side of it or what is that natural protection mechanism. Like, okay, I can hear that. For me, it's repetitive noises like that. That's telling me that there's danger, there's something there. So if I get healed, am I not going to be able to have that warning sign if something's trying to harm me? That would be my... And
I think that also goes to the question that you had about will someone still feel like they have their edge?
Yeah, because I think for me, and so my identity crisis was my injury. Yep. And so when we chose to do the bike ride, my leg was 2 kilos lighter. And so when I bought a push bike, I only cycled 8 miles, but straight away being physically active,
Felt better.
I felt better. So that was my coping mechanism for my mental health, was being physically active. And so, and interesting enough, and there was a question I was going to ask earlier, when we actually did the bike ride, we applied for the world record and we spoke to the charity, they said to me, what's the message you're trying to promote? I said, well, physical activity helps your mental state. And then this was 2016. They said, oh, no, you can't use that. I said, why not? So it's not been scientifically proven. I said, well, I don't need a scientist to tell me that I feel good when I do it. And it sounds very similar to where we are at the moment at this stage with these psychedelics. And then fast forward about 3 years later, I was guest speaking at Scotland Rugby and Scotland Football Club. Soccer club. And I made that comment, and this gentleman came up to me afterwards, didn't he, the doctor, and he just put this big folder down. He said, there's the science behind it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So with psychedelics, there's obviously a lot of research. Do you think the military will get behind this when there is enough research? And do you think guys because we're talking about veterans who have left having this treatment, do you think hopefully in the future that they can offer this while still serving, because that could keep guys in longer, and benefit the military as well?
I think it goes back to the ice bucket concept, where if you give someone a psychedelic before they hit that point where they need to take their hand out, will it affect their ability to serve? I don't know, but I know right when you take the hand out, like Marcus would still be serving if he had that opportunity.
And this is not, again, I think what people get scared about, well, we're not going to be able to fight wars in. We're not talking about a platoon of 18 individuals that need this. Maybe one
guy,
maybe 2 or 3. But even then, 2 or 3 out of 18, maybe those 2 or 3 need it, right? If they're asking for it, like, let's help those individuals before we turn them over and then maybe something detrimental. We're not talking about, there's 18 guys in the platoon or girls. Like, let's give 18 guys or girls psychedelics or whatever they come up with, by that time. No, we're just telling, if an individual needs it, like, let's help that
ways
individual.
of coping right now are definitely not working.
Yeah.
And the stigma and the culture of not saying you need help and self-medicating and numbing with alcohol or pills or self-destructive behavior, that's not doing anyone any good. So I think that more research needs to be done, because I certainly think that it could help with forced retention and possibly even force optimization. But I also think that there is a certain mindset or profile of individual that at least is born, made, whatever, for special operations. And that trauma or whatever it is that produces such resiliency obviously serves its purpose in these communities.
We need guys to keep their hands in the water, right? That's the...
I like where Alana is with that. I've been asked to go on an ayahuasca, and I know on my bike ride, I dig deep, and I think that energy, and again, it's me not knowing much about it. I think if I went on ayahuasca, I would lose that edge. I would lose that. But I have heard from yourself, and I've heard from other SEALs that you don't lose your edge.
No, you're going to be a better version of you. I think I tell people, I'm like my right cross is just as powerful as it was before, but like I may not need it all the time.
Yeah.
But when you need to use it.
You may not launch it as often as you would before. That's 100%. The thing. You
That's
still
why
got the strength.
I often try and explain it to Dean is that, look, when it comes to that room, you could probably take pretty much everybody in that room. I know that, you don't need to tell them that. That's the problem, that when the anger comes out, you want everybody to know that this can happen. Whereas I feel like something like this treatment could make and understand that you don't need to tell everybody in that room that I'm just at one with myself.
And Alana, I think we should get this point across too, because I think this is important, because we do, I don't want to say push this a lot, but it's like what we do. So we talk about it because it's worked for me, and it's working for like a lot of other people. You can get there other ways, right? A lot of individuals we see have been brought back to their faith, for instance, through this therapy, because they've just like going, oh my goodness, I had this relationship with a higher power or whatever it is. But there's other ways to heal. Psychedelics aren't, it's just another tool. Yeah. It's a very powerful tool. I think it's a very good tool. We should use it sparingly. The indigenous cultures used it for thousands of years. not every day. They used it when they needed to.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe they needed it once a year, maybe every couple years, but they used it for a very specific purpose, not just to do it, right? And we should definitely make that point. So,
and do you think it's because it's the stigma that it's a psychedelic?
It's a drug. I think for sure.
Because UK is going to be a lot worse to try and persuade than the US. I know, like in the military, it was 100% no drug policy. We used to have compulsory drug tests, and you're out. Same here. Yeah.
They don't even let active duty personnel use CBD.
You can't use CBD.
products.
It's the same as us.
CBD. Yeah.
Well, some of the protein shakes were illegal for us as well. And we're like,
but
that's
is
illegal.
that
When ephedrine was
is
around.
that you know, that forced kind of education that, because I remember the first person I knew that started doing CBD products in the UK, like, and it was after anybody probably done it here, but when she sat down and explained it to me and explained the lack of hemp in her diet, which we used to have, and explained all the different, I was like, wow, that makes a lot more sense, rather than thinking about, you know, the movies of the 90s where everybody's sitting around getting stoned. Like it's I think we're almost, it's better for them to have us believe a certain way. And I think we automatically think, and I used to say this when I used to work with the royal family and things, I used to think that they would know everything about fundraising or know everything about running a business and really, no offense to the royal family, but they didn't. They had sometimes took the worst people on to do things. And you just automatically presume that a government runs correctly or a country runs correctly because you'd have the right people, but no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so when you came back, and you said that we need to help more veterans. Was this the starting point of Vet Senses? When you guys came together as well and started working together? Because at this time you'd almost been working separately.
Yeah.
Yes and no. We had a grassroots portion of pre-vets that lasted for about 18 months, and because of the stigmas of even asking for help or saying you were struggling, I wanted 12 other individuals and 12 months to go by before we would have the courage to speak out. And I also didn't want to be like a snake oil salesman, like, oh, the Capones said this and they're crazy. I didn't want to risk our reputations like that. But at the 11.5-month mark, one of Marcus's former teammates and one of my best friend's husbands took his life. And we were sitting in his funeral in the same chapel that we had been to countless war funerals. And this one felt so different because he took his own life and he had survived so many combat deployments. And I just thought, this chapel cannot hold the funeral wave that is coming by suicide if we don't do something.
This individual was like one of the best guys you've ever worked with. You know what I mean? Like he was
the last person you would ever think this could happen to.
He was that good. He was that loyal, that tough, you know, all of it.
Yeah.
Like zero ego. I mean, like almost like minus ego, right? Yeah. That type of individual. And then when that happened, everybody kind of turned around and said, well, what about me? Like, what if I have a moment of
like, if it could happen to him, it could happen to any of them.
So there was no,
So at that point I was just like full tilt. And luckily, our daughter was 16. She could drive herself at that point. Or she was, I guess, 17 at that point. No, 16. And it just was the perfect time for me to tackle something full throttle. And so we put together a 501c3 application and we just got to work because we knew it was working at that point.
And,
Far more than
did
12.
your kids see it? Did your kids see the difference?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Very much so. Our whole family dynamic shifted. Generations have shifted because Marcus was repeating some of the same patterns that his father endured.
And I was going to say, because they'd have witnessed a lot during that time.
Yeah.
Have they been left with any like trauma that would?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And do you think you would deal with it or they would deal with it in this way?
I would, our son, I would like to see him deal with it in this way. I don't know that he's open to that or ready for that, but I think it could absolutely help.
Yeah, and we definitely don't like, again, push anything. You can't force anybody to do anything. People have to make their own choices, but we can give them the tools and bring them to the water and say, hey, here's everything you need to know. It's up to you. You know, we're not going to force it on you.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
And are you seeing a big increase in veterans coming to you.
Oh my gosh.
Because I'd never heard it till I come to America. And one of the guys I'm working with on this show, he's a SEAL, and he said 100%, all his friends are going down there doing it. So they're already within the veteran community, people are talking about it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'll go back to Special Operations Command invited vets to have a booth.
Yeah.
Just because they know the work that we've been doing. I mean, our wait list is pretty long.
Wow.
So Vets has been running for 4 years.
Since 2019.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we've had incredible success because we offer the programmatic support. It's not just about giving someone a psychedelic. You have to have the proper dosing and sourcing and facilitation, the setting. You have to give someone a lot of preparation. You've got to give someone a lot of integration because it unlocks traumatic experiences or negative ways of being. And you really have to be working with a professional in order to change the trajectory. Marcus ran into one of his friends who had been down not all that long ago and said, "Didn't you go to Mexico recently?" And he said, "Yeah. And it didn't work for me." And he's like, "Why not?" And he said, "Because it brought up a bunch of shit from my childhood that I don't want to think about." And Marcus was like, "It did what it was supposed to do."
It was supposed to do.
Yeah. It can really unlock some.
And was your one, was it a nonprofit that you'd worked with, or was it when you done yours?
Yes, actually it was. Another nonprofit, just a friend of ours just decided, will you tell me, because you were working
Kirk
with them.
raised the money and it went through Mikhail's nonprofit.
Yeah,
it
but
wasn't,
it was
a
still
sustainable
nonprofit,
model. It wasn't
okay.
what it was necessarily set up to do, but it, definitely saved him. So we're set up to do just this. And it's great that we can give veterans checks and they can go to Mexico and have this opportunity. But really the best part about vets is that we have this robust programming before someone goes and as soon as they get back.
Yeah, now there's a whole community. Like you're saying, there's a whole tribe around it.
Yeah.
And there's literally every day of the week, there's a different program. Multiple meditation courses, yoga, breath work, community, all of it. So, so Dean, whenever you're ready, you can put an application in.
And how does it get funded then? How do you get?
So we raise donor dollars in the US and we're going after some corporate donors this year, where before it's just been straight philanthropy with, high net worth individuals or even, $10 a month donors who just really believe in our mission. It's been a labor of love, but it's grown and there's no doubting the efficacy of what we're doing.
And do you have is it you guys that decide where the grants go then, or is there a team of
There's a team.
I think Amber has over 20 now working underneath her or alongside her. Yeah. And there's a whole application process and it's done really well. It's almost automated now where, we kind of rack and stacks the individuals depending on number of combat deployments, where they've gone, how severe they're dealing with. So there's a whole kind of intake and application process now. And so every week, 5 to 6 individuals go down, sometimes more. We're budgeted for about 250 per year, but like everything else, it's very hard to turn, if you see these applications, it's like, terrible. We turn away probably 9 out of 10. So we're accepting one. If you read the other 9 applications, like you have trauma from that. Like some of them, people are spilling their guts out of what they've gone through, what they're dealing with. And you're like, man, I can't help you because we have to help these 3.
Yeah. Is that purely because of funding? Is that funding which is restricting?
It's a few things. It's funding. There's bottlenecks around. I keep cutting you off.
I'm sorry.
I'm aware of that though.
That's a huge step.
It's funding, of course, which we have enough funding, but it's still bottlenecks around vetted retreats, right? Because this is still new. So there's not so many people that you can trust with this stuff and to do it in places where they're legal. Therapy, huge bottleneck. There's over the next 10 years, supposedly we need about 100,000 additional, just because of
not even additional therapists, but like trained therapists in psychedelic integration. Because if you go into a standard run-of-the-mill therapist and you say, I had a psilocybin experience and I was
none
a 4-year-old.
Of them are run-of-the-mill, just not as qualified as individuals that
can preface that. Yeah. You say I had a crazy psilocybin experience. I was a 4-year-old and I was back in my childhood bedroom and this happened, and they're probably going to be like, what are you even talking about? And you really have to be working with someone who
There's
understands.
specialized training around,
Right.
like you
Yeah.
said, we were talking about when you unpack 50 years in 5 hours.
Yeah,
You know,
wow.
not every therapist can deal with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it must feel worth it when you receive text like that.
Mhm.
You know,
So it keeps
you
us
see
going.
the
Yeah.
impact.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it
Yeah.
just the veterans, or do you deal with spouses as well?
Spouses as
Spouses
well.
too.
I'm like most excited about spouses and of course the children. I think that they're truly are the unsung heroes of the last 20 years.
Yeah, I feel like there would be a market for the children's trauma. I guess what they've seen and what they can hear and the noises and everything else. But and one, what the spouse might go through as the partner, but also, as we were saying, that stoic individual that needs to stand by a special forces guy. The ones that I've definitely spoke to have their fair share of childhood trauma anyway, and that's
Yeah.
what makes them tough enough to stand
Yeah.
next
That's
to
right.
that
Yeah.
guy. So
That's exactly
it's
right.
really interesting.
That's where they form the resilience to
For sure.
to special forces.
I do
Yeah.
have one question for Amber though. During everything that you're doing, which is amazing, and we know the world that we live in today with the social media and trolls, etc., etc. Does anybody ever tell you don't belong doing what you're doing? As in, who do you think you are? What do you know about being a veteran? Anything along those lines?
Not that. I have chosen not to do psychedelics. And I think that there's a multitude of reasons why I've chosen that. But I'd say if anything, I get maybe questions like, why are you devoting your life to this? You don't even do psychedelics. And I think it would be sending the wrong message that this is some sort of a panacea or there's only one way to heal. I think that psychedelics bring about an awareness that can be achieved in other ways, but it's definitely like a rocket ship. So that's probably the main. I do get some flack for being rather unapologetic and convicted. That's a nice way of saying
Yeah.
I can drop the hammer.
I mean, that's normally where me and Dean, who am I? And usually I've got the bitch. I'm the bitch. That's it.
Yeah.
He's the good one. But I feel like I've got a duty, as I was saying earlier, to protect him from, the bads of the normal world that they're not used to, i.e. they ask him for money and making sure nobody's abusing his value and things. So that's why I was asking. I was interested if you had haters, I guess, is the word.
No, but I certainly have had my fair share of hardships being a female, just in this space that's largely dominated by men.
Mm-hmm.
But they've been very respectful to me. But when it is hard to be like a female leader of an organization.
And there are definitely some people that think that these drugs are bad and evil and kind of dark, right? And we're hearing that now, but it's definitely from individuals who have no idea, like no clue, and just need to just do a little bit of more work and research. And again, that's why we don't like shove these down people's throats. They're just a tool and a very powerful tool, and use them correctly. It can be used incorrectly too, just like everything can. I mean, so we try to, make sure we're doing everything right.
I think a lot of that too, that lack of education is fear-based and just, I think of myself, and my conditioning and the way that I was raised to think that, you mind the rules and you take your medicine. And like, I never questioned that military medicine and the VA had given Marcus 10 prescriptions.
Yeah.
Because that's normal. Yet he's on 0 now. He's living his very best life. And I look at my life now and it's like light, love, hope, happiness, all these good things, where before it was like anger, resentment, bitterness, doom, gloom, despair, desperation. I had to recondition myself and my beliefs that a pill is a drug and a plant could be a cure. And there are a lot of people who think the exact opposite, like I did.
Yeah.
And Big Pharma, the U.S. government is Big Pharma's number one customer.
Yeah.
And they have lifetime subscribers.
Yeah. Well, that's the biggest thing we've seen since coming from the UK to here. It's just because pharma is illegal to advertise on TV in UK.
Really?
Yeah, we don't have it advertised.
Gosh,
and what we have in the UK is we have the National Health Service, which is paid for by the government, which we're fortunate to have. So they don't want to give you pharma because it costs them money. And so they look at all the other alternative
well, they
options.
do. They will offer it to you, but only on because of their time scales. Well, okay, you're not doing great. Let's give you some antidepressants. But if you're in pain, they'll give you the weakest, to get anything stronger, you would have to really fight for it. When we got here, I think Dean broke his elbow, nothing sexy, fell off Molly's skateboard. And they gave him some
narcotics,
something that was super strong anyway, because he was out of it and it was hilarious. But day 3, they called, would you like some more? Actually, no, he's okay. The first day he was in pain, now he's good. Yeah. Well, we'll get you some more anyway, just in case. No, it's okay. He's totally
Isn't that
fine.
wild? That's wild, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And those drugs, those exact drugs can actually kill us. Literally. And we're talking about stuff here that...
You're talking about plants.
That
are giving people their lives back. And,
wild.
Going all the way back to childhood. And one of our close friends went down and he shared with us that during his experience, he opened curtains, and in the very back of this like basement type of room, there was his trauma, and it was in a box with chains and spider webs. And it was like, this is it. This is what's been holding you back your whole life, but also propelling you forward.
Yeah.
It's not serving you anymore. It's that awareness and that, ability to like identify and now start working through it.
What was in the box? I don't know.
Well, he said that, he went to the box and like, it was right there. And I don't know what it is because he didn't say what it is, but whatever experience it was, or, it was like this dark.
Mm-hmm.
And did he open it?
He didn't share that with us, but he knew immediately what it was and then was able to face it. And working with a professional, it goes all the way back to when he was a very, very, very young kid.
Wow.
So, it's freeing people of these bondages that have kept them enslaved. And maybe they've channeled some of that into states of high performance, but, it's no longer serving them in the civilian world.
Yeah.
What I love about our mission too is that with this group of individuals, you give them like an objective and then a checklist on how to feel better, do better, be better, whatever. And they just want to check it as fast as they can. And they're almost creating a competition. So it's like, not only are they going to baseline, they're excelling above baseline because they're adding things like cold exposure, breath work, keto diet, intermittent fasting. And they want to be better, and they're becoming like,
Dean, my cold tub's broken at the moment, by the way.
we do have a cold tub.
Yeah.
But I would never stay in it.
It started leaking, so.
I would never stay in it
You're
for 13
welcome to
minutes.
come with us. We're going there after here. It's just going out of my head there. I'm thinking about it's all going cold plunging now.
You think you have to get your mind ready for that. Yeah.
So we're looking to do corporate now to get the funding in. What about individuals? They donate through the page, and
we still have our core constituency of single donors or families that have given, but our demand is absolutely skyrocketing. So in order to scale, we've got to turn on other streams of fundraising because right now we have a year runway, but as a nonprofit, you're always facing extinction. We don't have a product. We have the product is lives saved, and not everyone.
But
wants
we manage that well. So I know I've seen a lot of nonprofits. They go really wide outside of their kind of mandate, and we've stuck very true to like this is what we're doing. This is where the money's going. If a research project comes up, we'll fundraise specifically for that. So we won't just like take from the budget that's been built, and so we run it very, very clean and very, very, I guess efficiently, and we have to because we don't want to run out. Yeah, of course. So
and where can people find you? Where can people find vets and
the most
potentially donate?
Comprehensive collection of information would be our website, which is vetsolutions.org. We are also on all platforms of social media except TikTok. Our handles are all included on the website.
Okay. All right.
We've kind of skipped past it, but I did want to speak to you about something that me and Dean worked on. And it was weirdly enough how I first heard about you. And I wanted to see if it was something you were going to dive into again. But you done a show called Selection back in 2016.
It's probably why I got that phone call we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
How did that come about?
I got a phone call.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Somebody.
Which ironically, that was in like the worst
Yeah.
time.
I was going to say
it was
that
like
was
working
bad.
with
Was when you were,
No,
yeah.
That was bad.
that was bad. I'm trying to think exactly how that happened. I was working with Clint at the time in Dallas, and I don't know if they got a phone call or we did, but they said they were just looking for certain individuals to, instruct on this show.
Yeah.
And they stole it from the UK version.
Yeah. That was
Of,
it. Yeah.
was it Who Dares Wins?
Who Dares Wins? Yeah.
And I remember exactly the conversation. I said, well, I don't do that. And especially if it's like, if we're talking about like beating our chests and talking about war and I did this, like I will not do that. He said, no. You should look at the show. You're just going to be an instructor for civilians that want to go through like special operations training.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. And then I watched it and I watched this poor guy on his knees and this attack dog, and he pulled his hood off and the dog lunged at the guy and they held the dog there. And I went, oh, that's really cool. I want to do that.
Let's do that. Yeah.
So that's literally how it went.
came about.
Yeah. It was, and
So
that was
it
actually
was
fun.
interesting. Dean, the original concept for the show, which wasn't the same as what it was, they approached Dean about it, the UK version, and it was terrible. So Dean created the show at the time, and then he was still firmly loyal to the military at the time too, and they said he couldn't do it. He was actually out. He'd been out for a few years at this point. He was injured, so we didn't have an income stream really.
Yeah.
And they said that he wasn't allowed to do it. So Dean went and found the other guys for the show and got them onto it, and they were able to do it for various reasons. So
Originally, it was called Selection. I helped them with the treatment. I'd helped the treatment. And then the UK then called it SAS, but it wouldn't work here, SAS, So
Yeah.
yeah.
But I was a bit like you. I was I don't want to be on beating my chest.
No.
And there was a show back in the 90s called SAS, You Tough Enough, and it was a train crash. And so I was like, no.
Well, it also
Most of the shows
wasn't.
are, right?
I was not interested, but then
It also wasn't being fully. I guess the guys that done it, there wasn't a big love from the community, so that was a big thing for Dean to say no. But then the reason I actually found you doing it was we were thinking about bringing it to here. So we were looking and said, oh, it's already been, let's see if it worked. And then they've brought it back now with
Remy
and Rudy doing it here. I don't know how well it's gone down there, but would you still be interested in doing that kind of work?
Would you do TV now that obviously back in the day when you did it, you're in a dark place?
Yeah.
Would you look at that?
I think I would. I think I would. Again, I think it depends what it is, because even the Selection, I talked to several individuals I worked with and even senior leaders that reached out and just said, hey, when we first heard you were on TV, we started talking, crazy shit about you.
Yeah.
But then guys started watching it and they said, hey, you got to watch the show. Like Marcus is representing the community really well. And so, we apologize for saying anything if we did because we thought it was fine. I said, great. I said, because that's all I'd want to do. I want to make sure anything I do on TV is represented well and doesn't make it seem like it's individual and it's all about me. And because I've never been like that. And so as long as it passes the test of like, okay, it can.
For me, it's the community. It's really interesting. It was something you reminded me of something else as well. Is when I'm filming, I'm doing a show at the moment with one of the main broadcasters. I can't really go into too much details, but when they're talking to me like, oh, don't worry about that. I said, I do worry about that because I don't care about poor civilians. I don't care about the civilian community watching this. I care about my friends watching it.
Yeah.
And so, it's, you're almost an ambassador or representing them. So there's a lot of pressure on you. But interesting is when you said G.I. Jane, your reasons for joining the military. SAS, a lot of people from the community were like, the recruitment went up. To get guys and girls through the door, they need to see.
Yeah. Well, they have recruiting command now, right?
They have a huge issue. So this show we're going around the world, and I'm amazed at how many people are opening their doors because there is it's a recruitment drive. It's a platform that opens up to hundreds of millions.
I think it's funny what you were saying about G.I. Jane, because for me,
I love G.I. Jane.
I mean, we must have watched that about 400 times, but she was like 36 when she was doing that. Yeah. And then she just had a baby. And I think I was going to have Tommy, and I was going through that same, oh my goodness, we've got all this going on. I was like, if she can do that at that age, it look like that, then I can.
There's a funny story. She tried to, and I'm going to butcher this, because I was not there, but one of the East Coast SEAL reunions, she showed up.
Oh, really?
And I think she got a beer thrown on her, full beer, like tossed in her face. Yeah. Again, don't quote me on that. I'm sure guys will laugh about that.
I would be really surprised if that was true.
If that didn't happen, it was very close to happening. Like, why do you think you can show up here at our tribe's kind of like gathering, right?
Yeah. We have a guy back in UK called Ross Kemp. And he did one called the Ultimate Force, which was the SAS. We just called it the Ultimate Fast. And I think in EastEnders, he was supposed to be in the parachute regiment. Every role he has, he's like a special forces guy, but he's probably not the best ambassador.
Sure. And we have plenty of that you know about. So I mean, the answer is definitely like yes, but I'm full tilt right now. I'll always be helping Amber and doing all this stuff we need for vets. And I have a full-time commercial business, Tara Mind, which is basically an extension of what we did with veterans, but we're doing this for the non-veteran population. So, we'll be the first company.
Is that a tree?
Sorry?
Tara.
Tara. It's a
okay.
Hindu goddess of compassion. It's kind of but we're taking what we learned there. As you know, the non-veteran population. So many people are struggling, with mental health, and I feel like we're full tilt involved in what we're doing. And so what Tara Mind's going to do is we're going to take psychedelic therapies and what we're doing, and as they become legal in the U.S., we're going to bring this to basically the employers and the insurers. So we'll be the first to make insurance companies pay for these treatments so more people have access to them. And so that's what we're doing. We feel it's an important mission because as these get rolled out to the civilian market, if insurance doesn't cover it, most people will not be able to afford these. And then I think, again, as a system, we have failed. So our mission will be complete once we get the insurance companies to pay for these treatments. Why do you think it is that treatments?
The big pharmas, why will they develop the synthetic drugs, but they won't do that? They could sell it for the same cost, I'm assuming, if it's working and it's doing.
I think the bigger challenge with big pharma and psychedelics is that psychedelics are generally more curative than they are palliative. And so you don't have someone taking something every day for the rest of their life. It doesn't fit their profit model to have a one-time experience.
Yeah, if someone takes it a few times in their lifetime compared to 10 years straight of 30-day supply of prescription.
So the simple answer is they don't want to cure you.
They need a lot of money.
But they're getting involved now. They're getting behind a lot of the drug development that's going on in the space, of course, because they have the money.
On the topic of expansion and more people receiving access, vets exist to give veterans the opportunity to travel outside of this country, which is horribly embarrassing. You're willing to die for this country, but you have to leave it to get meaningful solutions to healthcare. So we exist to provide that subsidy and then all of the support. Okay. We also fund research happening in the US, but really what we're moving into more than anything is advocacy. So getting laws changed at the state and federal levels so that more research can be done, more compounds can be developed, more veterans can be included. Right now, the state of the research is it's almost impossible to do it. You have to go through all sorts of red tape to be able to work with a Schedule I, illegal substance. And so when you've taken the year or 2 years that it takes to get to that point, you now develop your study and you want to stay away from high risk populations. So you're looking for one indication and one potential treatment. Anyone with multiple diagnoses, which is like basically most veterans, and anyone with a history of suicidal ideation or especially suicide attempts, automatic disqualification from any research. So last time I checked, there were 600 and something trials going on around the world. 258 or so of them are in the United States. And I would venture to say few, if any, have a significant veteran focus or veteran enrollees. Yeah. So we're equally as focused on changing law in the US.
And what would be the law change to take off a Schedule I?
Yeah, so there's that. And then there's just unlocking federal funds so that philanthropy no longer has to cover the costs of all of this research. You look at what MAPS, another organization, is doing with getting one of the compounds through FDA clinical trials. All in all, they'll need to have raised $250 million from philanthropy, donors who believe in the mission. Like it's impossible.
Yeah, so it's just a challenging environment to bring these drugs to market, but it's happening. So right now, individuals, there's one drug that is being utilized. It's being used off-label, although it's FDA approved, is ketamine, ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. It's proving to be, it's arguably the world's strongest antidepressant. It works almost, I don't want to say instantly, but within an hour. An individual who is depressed is not depressed anymore. An individual who is suicidal is not suicidal anymore. So it's starting to get out there that ketamine-assisted psychotherapy is really working. Why we kind of put it in with other psychedelics, because you do go through like a hallucination on it for about 45 minutes. The other two drugs that are have been both classified as FDA breakthrough status is MDMA and psilocybin. Both those, again, have to be paired with therapy. So it's MDMA-assisted therapy and psilocybin-assisted therapy. MDMA, as Amber mentioned, it's already passed its phase 3 trials, which means it should technically be good. It'll be coming to market for clinical access in 2024. And then psilocybin will come to market in 2025. So this is all happening very quickly. So we just have to build the infrastructure, which means more therapists and training and education.
The other thing I was going to say is that we're receiving outreach from a lot of other countries. So we just had a veteran come through from Sweden. And it was really interesting to see this sort of transformation that was different than like your typical US special operations soldier. But it was just as effective.
Did a bunch of stuff in during like kind of what was going on in Bosnia and
but yeah, we've been contacted by a number of other countries. So international expansion is also on the list.
The UK and Israel and
amazing. Normally our last question is what is your purpose? But I think we've actually covered that, unless you want to add to that. But I also want to if there's anything else you guys want to cover as well before.
What is your purpose?
Yeah, what is your purpose?
I would say my purpose is to live a predestined plan for my life. It's never been like, what do I want to do? Because I willingly took myself off. I sat on the sidelines raising the kids and keeping everything going at home for 2 decades. I never in a million years thought that I would be doing what I'm doing today. So it's just an honor. And I feel like looking back over my life, whether it was Caden keeping us together or just experiencing the rock bottom and being able to encourage others to keep fighting, I want to live God's purpose for my life. And so if this is it, never thought I'd be doing it, but it's an honor to do it.
Yeah. And I'm learning that the more I serve, the more things happen. Yeah. And so if I could, I'd say my purpose, to answer the question is just to continue to serve, because, I think all of us here, we can sell a widget. And I mean, I don't know about you, Dean. For me, I don't like that. It feels a bit gross.
Yeah.
So if I'm doing something that is helping other people, we're seeing it. We get those text messages. Those text messages are literally, I sometimes just completely break down because I may not even know this person, but we just changed the course of maybe the rest of their life, and then maybe their kids' lives, and then their kids. And so I feel like the more we can do that, like life is good, we're good, our kids are good. I have a shirt that says peace is possible. It doesn't mean like, hey, sure, maybe one day we'll get there to peace, but it's more internal peace. So that's the other part is if I have internal peace, I feel like everything else just kind of falls into place.
Yeah.
So
I think I heard something recently that for Dean, and I think it would fit for yourself as well from Bedros actually, that
I've seen him. I don't know him, but
super important to ask for help. And what I mean by from you two is that you have got the amazing ability, and Andrew, we've all got this ability to help the world, and we've been given this purpose to go out and help and do these things. But we've got this huge community as well that can also help us. So to be able to say, you can do this for this and you can do this and actually help, that's what they're all there for. So we were speaking about asking for money and these things not being super comfortable for us. You have to be able to do the things that you've got the ability to do.
So true.
It's our duty to serve others. And so if I don't ask him for help, he can open up a lot of doors. And so I'm doing a disservice by not asking.
That's so true.
That's his. Yeah. I think for me, thank you. I've loved this one. Thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, thank you for your honesty. It's opened my eyes. Thank you for staying with Marcus, sticking with him. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this. I don't think we'd be having this conversation. So I actually don't know who is the one behind the scene at all, but I like to say.
Yeah. Amber's definitely, I think that one's easy. I think Amber's a hero.
Yeah.
I think,
True. She's definitely a true hero. And I just want people to know that.
No.
So